Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. We make Chris Skinner's Countryside podcast, and we've got something very exciting to share with you. We have a new service that's being launched, and it's called Spoken Stories.
Spoken Stories is all about recording the voices and memories of your loved ones in outstanding quality, so they can be enjoyed for generations to come. For example, you know the story that Grandma tells that everyone in the family has heard before. Well, Spoken Stories is about getting those stories down and preserving them for your family history. Spoken Stories is about gifting someone the time to capture these personalities and unique voices.
We record your loved ones' tales, whether it's their whole life story so far or something more specific like a life-changing event. It is a gorgeous experience, and what you're left with is a beautiful monologue that really captures the essence of that person.
Think of it like an audio portrait, and take a listen to a snippet of this one from Diane's spoken story, recorded in her beautiful garden.
I was born in 1951 at Newmarket, and unfortunately I didn't see Mum for a year. I was looked after by a lovely nurse called Diane, my name, because my mum had TB when I was born. And so my mother never worked because with her problem with her, lungs, she had to go and have it sort of pumped up every so often. She used to do a lot of dressmaking, so she always made our clothes years ago. But yeah, she was a lovely mum, yeah, and Dad as well, yeah. That's very nice childhood I had, yeah, very nice. Yeah. I got married February the 16th, 1974. The weather was gorgeous. I ended up having to put on a big sort of T-shirt under my wedding dress I didn't need. I had a lovely one of those transparent umbrellas in case it rained, and it was just a beautiful day. I think I'm always sort of quite cheerful. I mean, if I go down the Luke and deliver some eggs to somebody, I'll meet somebody and chat, and then Paul say, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been chatting to people." That's just my way. That's just how I am. We've always lived here. We had this built in 1974. They put the footings down in February and we moved in the August. Years ago, I used to go around the village on a bike, and when I had Ian, he'd sit on the back. We live in a lovely area. We've got lovely neighbours. They help us all out, which you all do with neighbours, and that's very, very nice. And as I said to Paul, I'm hoping we can keep this place on until, well, I don't want to move from here until I go out in a brown box. I hope that's not too soon.
If you'd like more information about Spoken Stories and to take advantage of our special introductory offer, you can head to www.soundyard.org/spoken stories.
And keep listening after this episode with Chris, and you'll hear another example of a spoken story. It's a view of the world from a 6-year-old.
Good morning, everybody. It's 3:30 in the morning. Just starting off. Oh, bat just flew past me. And a song thrush is sounding out the dawn chorus this morning. A little bit unusual because we're on the cusp of July. Normally the dawn chorus has just about finished now at this time of year, but many of the thrush species, obviously the song thrush above my head, blackbirds, robins, missel thrushes often have a go at a second brood at this time of year, particularly if the weather's been inclement early on in the season and they lost the first brood. Many will have a crack at another brood, and that's probably why this song thrush is singing just above my head. I'm out in one of the small areas of woodland at the farm, and out on the hedgerows, blackcap, whitethroat, lesser whitethroat, Garden warblers are all singing away. Can hear them all in the distance. Lovely way to start the morning. Norwich is waking up, a couple of miles to the north of the farm, and the rush hour will be in 3 or 4 hours' time. Everybody heading off to work, and here it's a more gentle start to the day, and it's my favourite time of day. You kind of have the world to yourself. Rat's with me, and the thrush's probably spotted him as it's singing up in the oak tree above my head, and has gone quiet for the moment. So we'll head out onto the farm and see what there is to see and hear. And Matthew Gudgeon will be joining me about 9:30 this morning, and we'll be looking, as we did last week, at some of the predators here at the farm. And there's one species which has been entertaining me in the most delightful way, and it got caught on my trail cam. Lovely. Oh, a lovely way to start the day. Wood pigeon. And another. With their really lazy, repetitive, kind of reassuring call right above my head. And I've had 2 questions on wood pigeons for this week's Countryside podcast, and Matthew and I will be answering as many as we can later on this morning. And my new bantam cockerel has decided to join in the dawn chorus as well. Little bit scratchy. It's early morning crowing.
Chris Skinner's Countryside Podcast with Matthew Gudgeon.
Chris, a stoat looking at us. Looking at
right
us.
in front of the truck. It's heading straight towards us. That is an unbelievable sight.
Rat's interested.
Rat's
it's running under the car.
It's gone under the car.
It's got a bright white bib.
Yes. Oh, Matthew. I couldn't have wished for anything better, because, believe it or not, we're going to talk about stoats this morning. Because there it is. It's just hooked into the side of the woodland here. We're on the edge of Cantley Hill Plantation. That's 12 acres of mature woodland. But basically...
We were just driving along in the farm vehicle, weren't we?
Yes, basically the woodland is a rabbit warren with 200 or 300 rabbits here. And I drive down this track every morning. And a week ago, I was driving along the edge of the wood here and turned up the hill, and on the crest of the hill I thought there were 2 grey squirrels going in and out of the woodland at lightning speed, and I thought, oh, they're mating, or they must be sort of getting very amorous to behaving like that. I'll open the door and Rat can go out. He won't catch that, but it's secreted down a rabbit burrow at the moment.
What a way to start the podcast this week. Welcome along to the Countryside Podcast with Farmer Chris Skinner. We're on High Ash Farm Just on the outskirts of Norwich, beautiful square mile of Norfolk countryside. It's a warm day as well, not quite as warm as of late. And we're out and about now, and the stoat has disappeared.
Yes, amazing. I couldn't have wanted anything better than to see one in the flesh. Mustela ermina, one of the several species closely related to weasels, polecats, pine martens as well, and absolutely stunning to see one like that. Sometimes they will come out in the open during daylight hours. Weasels are much, much smaller, and you can tell the difference, not just by the size, but if you notice the underside of the stoat was creamy, almost pure white, and the demarcation line between the brown on the back and the white belly underneath is smooth. It's a straight line on the stoat, so smooth for stoat, and then the weasel, it's wavy. And they're the larger members of the family there, much larger than the weasel. So a male stoat, which is what I think we just saw, is about 12 inches, 30 centimetres from tip of nose to tip of tail, and they are ferocious carnivores. And in our country, it's the only mammal that can kill prey much larger than itself. So it can comfortably kill a rabbit, and they are incredibly fast, which is what attracted me to the far end of the wood this earlier last week. And I managed to get the camera there, and I caught some of the film, and looking at it in the farm office, I just burst out laughing because they are lightning speed. Their legs move in a blur so quickly that they seem to spend more time in the air. And obviously it was a male and female stoat, and just doing a courtship dance. Just stunning, and I managed to capture just a few seconds of it, but it's made me laugh every time I see it.
They run with this arched back, don't they?
Yes, they do, and that's the secret of how they move so quickly. So it does appear arched, but when they move, they kind of the front paws go forwards and the back paws stay where they are, and they kind of go along like a caterpillar, but it's done at lightning speed, and that's why they're formidable carnivores, because they can catch a rabbit. Now, you would think a rabbit can outrun a stoat, because rabbits get quite a burst of speed on to get back to the warren for safety. Firstly, they're not safe if they do get back to the warren, because a stoat is small enough to go easily down a rabbit hole. They're quite sort of sinuous animals, and they can bend and twist. And during the winter months, before I forget to mention it, in the northern part of the UK, stoats turn white, and that's called ermine, and hence the scientific name Mustela, which is a family name, ermina, which is referring to that white colour that northern stoats go to in the winter months. It's all really sort of depending on the temperature, the nighttime temperature particularly, and if there's snow on the ground. And a brown stoat can turn completely white, go to ermine in other words, in about 3 days. It's amazing. The white coat is underneath, but it's the coat loss of the old brown coat happens incredibly quickly. And ermine, as we know, is worn in the House of Lords. I think there are various bands around the ermine, which some of the lords wear, the peers. And I think if there are 4 bands of little black dots, and that's the only difference on the stoat that doesn't change colour to ermine, it's the tip of the tail. They always have that black tip, which just disappeared into the woodland. Rats going up and down this track, he said, wow. And the other thing is, they emit a very strong smell.
So Rat will be getting that now.
Yes, he will. He'll be picking that perfume up. He's coming along towards us with his nose right on the ground, his tail wagging. And we used to, at school, if the boys weren't too good with their underarm deodorant, the old saying was, "God, you stink like a stoat, boy." And they were our school friends. And because stoats have this incredibly pungent smell, and what happens is, as well, because stoats will often set up a territory in a rabbit warren, and often the the rabbits can be seen out playing, and stoats playing out with them as well, and they tend to almost be exempt from attacks by stoats. But once a stoat attacks a rabbit, even if it hasn't caught it, if it's close to it, the rabbit becomes petrified, and it's called a stoated rabbit, and it just forgets how to run.
So it's like a rabbit in the headlamps.
Exactly that. And the stoat comes along, and although the rabbit can be more than a kilo, perhaps 5, 6, 7 times the weight of a stoat, the stoat will give it a sharp bite on the back of the neck. Obviously, because a rabbit's quite big, it's quite a slow process to actually dispatch the rabbit, so it's a bit of a bloody process. And then the stoat is incredibly strong. That lithe, muscular body is strong enough to drag a rabbit out from like a grass track that we're standing on into the cover of woodland, and there it will feast on the best meat on the rabbit. And amazing.
Well, we often see rabbits when we're driving along this avenue here, but not today.
No, it's completely clear. This morning when I drove down here early just to check what we were going to do for the day and see what wildflowers are about, we've got hemlock in flower beside us, and there was perhaps 50 rabbits ran across in front of me. It was very, very early, and I mean early. It was about 3:30 this morning. I like a nice early start. You have the world to yourself at that time.
It's getting light then, isn't it?
It was quite light. And then a little bit of the life history of the stoat. Quite a shock, really, because the stoat, male stoat, will mate with a female after she's given birth, and then there will be young in the nest, sort of anything between 3, 4, 5 up to 12 young stoats. And the females, it's almost after the 9 o'clock deadline, this, I'm afraid, the male stoat will mate with these tiny little female stoats. It's really, really unusual behaviour, and the female stoats will conceive, but they will not give birth for a year, and it's called delayed implantation of the fertilised eggs, which are inside these young stoats. They haven't got any fur on, they're blind, and they're still receptive to the male stoat.
So it's how stoats have evolved to survive and thrive.
Yes, it is. And so the female stoats will grow up, and people have kept them in captivity, knowing they haven't been near a male stoat, and then, total surprise, when they're a year old, they give birth as well. So this is the time of the year that they mate, both with the young and the females that were mated the previous year as well. This delayed implantation occurs, so the fertilised eggs, they're called blastocysts, they don't actually embed in the uterus wall for many, many months, and then the normal gestation period carries on once they implant, and you've got a good food supply early next spring when the young are born. Amazing. That was a stunning sight.
They're not easily spotted, are they?
No. I'm just gobsmacked that we saw that. It goes straight towards us, under the truck, and disappeared into the woodland edge here.
Totally amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've said it all. I'm gobsmacked.
So is Rat. Well, Chris has transplanted us to a different spot on the farm. We're very high up with a panoramic view over Norwich. I can see the City Hall clock tower in the distance there. It's a wonderful part of the farm, this, and lots of history as well. And just before we go on, Chris, to say that the stoats, if you want to see those images that Chris took of the bouncing stoats, it's the Facebook page for the farm, isn't it? High Ash Facebook.
Yes, that's right, Matthew, and hopefully that'll be up for this weekend, so you'll be able to enjoy just a glimpse of what we were just treated to. That's absolutely amazing, and they're very welcome at the farm, although they're predators. We don't carry out predator control here at High Ash Farm, and I've managed to stand back and let nature do what nature does, and the biodiversity here has increased every year since we've been adopting that policy. So delightful mammals to actually have at the farm, as well as the fox cubs we saw the previous week. And I've brought you to historic part of the farm here, Roman town, Venta Enormous, just down at the bottom of the hill. The horse has just ridden past us, and that's a really important area.
Rat the dog has disappeared.
He has, as always, in a patch of nettles, so we'll hear some yelping in a minute. And after the Romans left, we had several sort of invasions, and one a few hundred years after the Romans had gone were the Saxons. And this is an Anglo-Saxon cemetery. It's a lovely walk I've made directly from the Roman town, where there's a car park down at the bottom of the hill, and you can walk up here, and there's a little bit of the history of the cemetery. The Saxons cremated their dead and buried them in urns. Any of the bones and any of the tools that they worked with were cremated with them. And over 1,000 urns were excavated in the early 1930s, and then the excavation was stopped with the outbreak of the Second World War, and so much of the site has been left untouched, which is absolutely brilliant. And it's covered in elder trees as well, which are nearly finished flowering. And if we look at this hedge beside us, here's some elder still in flower, and it's on the north side of the hedge. And quite shortly, one sees all these little white flowers, big flat umbellifers of flowers. Oh, there's some, look, just going green now. They've been pollinated, those ones, and they'll form those rich sort of wine red berries in late autumn, which the winter visiting thrushes will feast on and enjoy. And so really brilliant. But later on in the year, we usually go around High Ash Farm visiting the different species of fungi. And when I was going around this morning, I spotted one, which is a little bit unusual because we're just on the cusp of July.
Yes, midsummer, isn't it?
Have a look here.
Oh, my word. Just looking probably 15, 20 feet up, a venerable tree near one of your owl boxes.
Well, there's 2 owl boxes up there.
Oh, yes, there's another one higher up.
Multi-storey owl boxes.
There is something that looks like a brain, a big, the size of a person's head.
It's not my brain, because I don't think I've got one. Sulphur polypore.
Sticking right out of the trunk.
Yes, and nearly always it's on a wound of a tree, and you can see years ago a branch was cut off that tree. Probably the horse and cart couldn't get underneath the big old limbs. These are venerable old oaks, and so the fungal spore, a single spore, got in where the wound is, where the branch was cut off, and it's an invasive fungi, so it will attack the heartwood on this venerable old oak tree. There's nothing you can do. You can't cut the fungus off. You can't use any fungicide to stop it. And it's got another name as well. The scientific name is sulphur polypore, but it's also called chicken of the woods. And I thought that would make you smile.
Is it because of the colour?
It's partly the colour, and if I could reach up, I'd break a little bit off, and it's pure white inside, because it's a young specimen at the moment. In a week or two's time, it will turn almost pure white and be like eating hard toast if you try to eat it. But at this stage, it's edible. And it is quite tasty, actually. It does taste, sorry for vegetarians who might be listening, it tastes exactly like well-cooked chicken. And so hence chicken of the woods.
Is it what you would call a bracket fungus?
Exactly that.
And there's one the other side as well.
There is as well, yes, just coming out.
It almost looks like a red sponge.
Yes, and it's called sulphur polypore because it just looks as though sulphur is pouring out of the tree, and polypore because of the arrangement of the bracket fungi. So it looks as though it's a liquid pouring out of the tree and sort of solidifying over on top of itself.
Yeah, almost like latex rubber, you see.
It does. It looks really weird. And I like the sort of shock reaction when you saw it. And although we're in the shade, it's almost luminous as well.
But how come it's so visible, though, at this time of the year when we normally see them later on in the year?
Yes, that's right. But this is a sort of summer fungi. You'll sort of see it from June, July and August time as its favourite time. And that's the time of the year once it starts to dry, it spreads its spores and they go off in the wind and infect other trees that might have a wound. If a car's crashed into one low down on the trunk, that Rat says we don't do car crashes, then it can get infected. And I notice there's another branch been cut off a bit lower down, and that's a suitable site for another one to erupt in a year's time. So really colourful. So there we are. Yes, I wondered what Rat was barking at. That's Claire riding her horse, doing an early morning ride, going around the farm. It was nice and relaxing till she went past Rat, who's dancing in between the horse's feet, as he does.
You naughty boy.
So there we are, and I'm just going to take you down one of the little hedgerows, and we're going to be answering some of our listeners' questions in a minute or two. But there we are, a surprise. So don't just walk along like a lot of farmers just looking at the ground. If you're out in the countryside anywhere in the UK during July, watch out for sulphur polyp, or chicken of the woods.
The ducks at High Ash Farm going in to roost for an evening. Hey everyone, it's Matthew here, and if you've been enjoying our countryside podcasts, we've got a small favour to ask.
Yes, Matthew. What we're going to do is to ask for a small donation to help run the podcast, and any surplus goes for conservation at High Ash Farm here. And so it's really important. We'd both love to keep the podcast going. And that duck agrees with me, I think.
Well, it's straightforward to donate. You can make a one-off donation or set up a small monthly contribution, and the address is highashfarm.com/podcast.
We're hugely grateful for any support. It means we can keep sharing the stories of the countryside, which I love doing each week, but it's that small amount of costs we need to cover. So thank you very much in advance.
Standing by a lovely hedgerow, and I think we'll get some blackberries off this later in the year, won't we, Chris?
Matthew, yes, you're always thinking your stomach, aren't you? But you're quite right. We're on the way to answer the listeners' questions this week, and we're driving up the hill, and I just had to stop at this spot because the side of the hedge here is covered in blackberry blossom. And it's a good year because there's lots of soil moisture down there, and it should be a good crop. And what doesn't get eaten, remember, drops down into the hedge bottom and helps feed all the small mammals. They'll all sort of relish that, field voles. And the other plant growing here is white campion, which we looked at previous weeks. This is a tall specimen. It's good 5, nearly 6 feet tall. Masses of white blooms, nearly finished as well. And then one of my favourites, just look in there.
It's a beautiful pink flower there,
yes,
isn't it? With a yellow middle there.
Yes, that's the dog rose, Rosa canina. And symbol of sort of Tudor Britain, really. The two houses, the houses of York and Lancaster, sort of went to war. I think it was called the 30 Years' War way back then, and they both adopted different roses as their symbol. But it's been the kind of symbol of Britain for centuries now. And this time of the year, it's in flower. The petals are all dropping down. There's a spider's cobweb underneath, conveniently catching all yesterday's petals. That one's in flower, a pale sort of dusky pink colour with white stamens yielding lots and lots of pollen, and many of it, because we've had hot weather recently, the flowering period doesn't last too long. Oh, hoverfly in that one just opened up that flower, and they do smell. They've got a very delicate smell first thing in the morning particularly, and then as they get fertilised, they start to form these little seed pods underneath. There's one, you can just see, bright green, quite large, and that ripens over the rest of our summer through July, August and into September, and gradually changes colour from that green to orange and then to bright red, and that's hips. So that's the fruit of the dog rose. So
Rose hip.
yes, rose hip. And of course it was really important because during the Second World War, we had job importing citrus fruits. So there was a general shortage of what hips contain in them, which was vitamin C. And so lots of people went out into the countryside, picked the hips and made rose hip syrup from it for children who could suffer from vitamin C deficiency, and pregnant ladies as well, in the early time of the national health back then.
So you did all right on that.
Oh, absolutely. Look at the state of me.
You're an early NHS baby,
I
aren't you?
certainly was. I was one of the first ones. Sort of 1949, the National Health Service was just before that. So very important source of vitamin C. And of course, these hips, these rose hips, when later on in the year, again, many get eaten by our winter visiting thrushes, things like blackbirds, the resident blackbirds, song thrushes as well will eat them. Local dustman going past.
Yeah, bin day, obviously, on Highash Farm.
Thursday, yes. And then our actual winter visitors that come across from Scandinavia, the red wing and the fieldfare in particular, they absolutely love them, and they must know they're rich in vitamin C as well as lots of energy too. So wonderful to see them when you get hedges draped with these lovely pale pink blossom. There's some more just round this side, just coming out today, but most of the flowering on this side, which is facing sort of south easterly, they've finished flowering, and on the other side of the hedge it will still be in full flower. So the flowering period is over quite a long period, and although it looks very demure, these are armed with formidable kind of shark's fin sort of spikes and curved hooks on all the way down the stem, all the way round. That's to deter deer, which love to reach up and graze them. You can see up here even the young stems, this year's growth. Look, there's a foot-long one there, and they're bright red, sharp claws. And if you try and cut one of the stems and try and pull it out of the bush, they hook onto each other, and so it's really good deterrent to stop deer and other browsing creatures from nibbling all the fresh foliage, which itself is nutritious. The horses in the horse paddocks love to reach in, and they fold their lips back and graze the freshly emerged tips of the dog rose off. So there we are, one of the symbols of Tudor Britain, dog rose, Rosa canina.
Sitting in the truck up high here on the farm, with a very nice view of the different fields and where people come to walk as well. But I've got a pile of people's questions here, so we better launch in, Chris. And this comes from John and Veronica. I wonder if you've heard of this behaviour before, they ask. We have a crow who often visits our bird bath. Sometimes he brings along a lump of bread, deposits it in the bath, and then flies away. A few minutes later, he comes back and then eats the bread, nicely softened.
Exactly that. I've seen that behaviour lots of times. Very, very clever birds, all members of the corvid family, particularly carrion crows. They're notorious for doing things like this. If they can't break an egg as well, they'll fly up in the air with it, and I've seen gulls do the same sort of behaviour as well, and drop the egg down, or even shells in the case of gulls. So they're always learning new behaviour and tricks, and this is an old one, soaking the bread to make it soft. How clever is that?
Veronica and John are also asking a question, quite an amusing one, about bird song and describing it in human terms, monomically. We have many wood pigeons in and around the garden, and their song is a constant and pleasant background. The wood pigeon's song is often described as, "My toe hurts Betty." My toe hurts Betty, my toe hurts Betty. Having listened with it so much, though, we believe that they are saying, "I'm bored I am, I'm so bored I am, I'm so bored I am bored." Really? I don't know. I don't get. Do you get that?
Yes, I do understand that completely. And to introduce this morning's podcast off, Matthew, I stood under one of the trees at High Ash Farm, and a wood pigeon made that wonderful song, if you like to call it that, right on top of the microphone. And yes, I could see that, but I find the song very relaxing. It is repetitive, but there's something about it which sort of starts the day off in a very pleasant way for me.
And Margaret, a regular listener, enjoys our rambles. We're rambling literally and metaphorically here as well. She says, I've got a rather mundane question about wood pigeons. We're always amused with their antics. However, although we have had them in the garden, we've never seen any young. Any of them being fed or just fluttering around? Have we missed something?
Not at all. Young wood pigeons, or squabs as they're called, stay in the nest for quite a long time, and they're fed by both parents, but the parents sort of chew up the food in a peculiar way, and they sort of exude like a milk-like substance from the crop to feed the young on. It's very, very nutritious. It consists of mashed up seeds and grains, and so no insects really, because they're really grain eaters. So stunningly clever birds to do that. But once the young leave the nest, then they can fly, and they do look rather like the adults. So you haven't missed anything, but there's usually pigeons. They usually have 2 eggs, hatch off 2, and hence the pigeon pair. That's where it comes from. And and most members of the dove family do the same thing, whether it's turtle doves, collared doves, or even the feral pigeons that you see in our cities. So you haven't missed anything. They'll just leave the nest and then they can fly like the adults.
We've got some ace photographers who often send in their images, and that includes Joseph and Catherine, who live at Headley on the Hill, Northumberland. And they say, here are a couple of snaps of village visitors. Keep up the good work. And there we are. They've labelled them barn owl and tiger beetle.
Yes, look at that. And 2 stunning pictures, particularly the barn owl with the long, broad wings and the tiny body in the centre. And so it's very low load bearing. So the body actually, the owl goes up and down a little bit when the bird's flapping its wings, because the body's so light in comparison to the huge wing area. And then an iridescent tiger beetle, the green tiger beetle, a beautiful photograph with the iridescence on the wings. Well spotted.
Jennifer Hoyle says, I was lucky enough to be back in Norfolk last week. I grew up in Cringleford in Norwich, but now live at Burley at Wharfdale in Yorkshire. On a wet walk around the Wells pine woods on the coast, I spotted the attached wildflower and wondered if you knew what it was. The flowers were a mixture of deep purple and red. And they look like your foxgloves, are they?
Yes, one of the photographs is of foxgloves, and it says they're just an equal match, and I agree with you, to the displays at Chelsea in amongst the pine woods. And then if you turn the photograph the other way up, there is a kind of mystery flower with 2 colours on one plant, and it's called common milkwort. And it is quite a common plant, and it sometimes grows out on the pastures here at High Ash Farm. And milkwort, because dairy cows were meant to milk particularly well if it was in the pasture mix. It's a long, straggly plant, and sometimes the flowers, as they open, will change colour once they're fully open. We looked at one about 2 weeks ago, which was Viper's Bugloss. Beautiful blue, cobalt blue flowers, but before the flowers open, they're bright pink. And that's the case with the common milkwort there as well. So the flowers are just open, they're kind of pinkish, reddish, and then once they're fully open, they're a different colour. Well spotted.
Shane Clark lives where I grew up, in Spixworth, just a few miles from here, north of Norwich. And It's not strictly a wildlife question, says Shane, but the other morning I walked into our kitchen to find our puppy Merlin playing with what I first assumed was a dead slug. However, when I looked more closely, I realised that he's he's excavated a flint. And it wasn't just any old flint. As you'll see from these pictures, it looks to us like the flint's been subject to napping at some point in the past. So is Merlin a genuine archaeologist?
And the quick answer is absolutely yes. You've got a beautiful little flint axe head there, beautifully napped all the way round and exactly the right shape as well. So without a doubt, that's it. And you can see the individual napping lines on the picture there, Matthew, where it's been struck with perhaps an antler to take off the flakes. Very definitely hand sort of made there.
It's only an inch and a half long,
It
isn't
is
it?
tiny, but nevertheless, that's exactly what it is. And remember, that's all our ancestors had to use. Local materials, bone, stones for their houses, and flints for tools as well. So, very beautiful. Not really worth anything in financial terms, but probably 5, 6, 7,000 BC, probably Neolithic.
Another image been sent to us from North Yorkshire, and hello to Lindsay Walker. And she says, I saw this bird on the canal bank at Fulridge near the Lancashire-Yorkshire border a few days ago, but didn't recognise it. It was about the size of a mallard, but it didn't have the usual rounded bill of a duck. Any ideas as to who it might be? And, a very attractive looking bird that, isn't it?
Yes, and the male is absolutely spectacular. You've photographed a female. It's a mandarin duck, very, very colourful, very sort of ornate as well, and features in people's wildlife collections if you've got a wet pond area.
So it's an ornamental species.
It's an ornamental species, introduced species, but the male is out of this world. It's one of the most colourful birds that you'll see in the United Kingdom. Well spotted.
Now, part of North Norfolk is known as Poppy Land, and David Evan Jones, who lives near Norwich at Thorpe, wants to know what's happened to all the poppies this year. He's loving all the oxeye daisies and the white fields, including here on the farm, but poppies, I've seen a fair few, but...
Yes, there are. Now, there's a secret with poppies which many people don't know. They will only grow on disturbed soil. So many fields that have been put down to wildflowers don't have poppies in them because the soil needs to be tilled. They're annual plants, if you like, so they will grow from seed to flower in the same year that they're planted. So you need to disturb the soil, bare soil, put your poppy seed on and then grow your own. So out in arable fields they would grow out in amongst the cereals, and modern agricultural herbicides destroy the poppies because farmers couldn't sell their seed for milling or for eating or for brewing if it's contaminated with weed seeds, and poppies are weeds. But all's not lost when new motorways go through or soil is moved. Poppy seed is one of the longest surviving seeds without having to germinate in the soil, and it can be down there for hundreds of years. Seed has been kept at Rothamsted Research Station, and it's well over 125 years old now and still over 90% viable. And remember, back in the First World War in Flanders in France, where all the bombing occurred and the trenches were dug, the fields were covered in poppies. The soil was very much disturbed, and we had the poppy fields of Flanders.
Thank you to everyone who's sent us an email this week. The address for future episodes, chris@countrysidepodcast.co.uk. And don't forget, there's the High Ash Farm Facebook page, isn't there? Facebook for videos and all the latest news. So High Ash Farm Facebook, and you'll see those stoats.
Yes, absolutely. And Matthew, we've parked the truck at a car park at the top of a hill at High Ash Farm, and all around the edge of the car park is one of my favourite wildflowers. It's called mallow, and it's fairly called the English hibiscus. In fact, it is closely related to hollyhocks and hibiscus, and it's in full flower at the moment, purple and absolutely stunning. So enjoy the countryside in July.
This is a Sound Yard production. Music is by Tom Harris.
Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. Our new service, Spoken Stories, is an incredible experience where we record the stories and voice of your loved one, which you can then hold on to forever.
It makes for an incredible gift, and anyone can make one. Take a listen to this. It beautifully captures the thoughts and feelings of life from a 6-year-old's perspective.
I'm 6 years old and I love running around. I can run very, very fast, but I'm even faster on my bike. That's why I love biking. It makes me feel energetic. And also I bike loads of places. I like doing sports like dodgeball. The people that are in charge in the world, well, I think that there should be no one in charge at all. So everyone's in charge. So there's no person that's in charge. So everyone is a bit more free. That's what I think. Well, what I try to change at the moment is global warming. It's when us humans litter, destroy the planet and all its nature. That's global warming. It makes me feel sad. And also, if us humans keep doing that, it could destroy the whole planet Earth, and then all of the human beings will be destroyed. I try to stop global warming, and also in my coat pocket I have a bit of Kit Kat litter I found on the floor once. I love the planet more than anything. Grown-ups should be stopping global warming, because grown-ups are more powerful than kids. But if kids can be more powerful than grown-ups, kids and grown-ups can work together and do it. Kids should be able to do the same things as grown-ups. They should have more rights. Well, I love myself because that I believe in a lot of things. That's what I love about myself. I like being a kid, but because when I'm a grown up, I'm gonna have my own kids because that's what I want. And also, I'm a bit worried to have kids, and I'm still gonna be a kid for a long, long time. So I'm glad that's actually gonna happen. I'm glad I'm gonna stay a kid for a long time. I'm gonna have kids because I want to know what it feels like to be a parent. I'm gonna be a good parent.
Isn't that just gorgeous? If you'd like to find out more about recording a spoken story of your own, or you'd like to buy this as a present for someone, take a look at our website, www.soundyard.org/spoken stories, and take advantage of our introductory offer. Alternatively, you can get in touch via email, hello@soundyard.org.
And if the internet isn't an option, you can leave a message with your details on our landline number. It's 01603 273 899, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.